Welcome to the Video Insiders Podcast. I'm Carlos Pacheco.
And I'm Tom Martin.
And we are two behind-the-scenes, opinionated channel managers, channel strategists, the guys who pull all the levers. I'm trying to be creative there. And we're here every week. Every other week, sending you our insights and thoughts of what's happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, and I got a feeling that this week there's going to be a third grizzled and opinionated YouTube behind the scenes expert that is going to be joining us. Am I right in thinking that, Carlos?
Yes. We have somebody I've looked up to for many, many years, Matt Gielen of Little Monster Media. He's been somebody that I've been following for many years throughout his career. What I love about him is that he really dives into the data and so the algorithm, as opposed to like the frontline tactics that many other YouTube online strategists focus on. So that's the part that really I've always appreciated more of him. And I remember when he launched Little Monster Media, I was like, yes, this is the type of business that I love that, can help, people with YouTube channels. And, because I'm talking to creators on a regular basis, they've focused for many years on making content and they got lucky. And I'm not going to say they're not talented, but they also got lucky in terms of like they built momentum, and then they never really looked at the analytics or what's causing the deep dive into what's causing the views. And, that's very much needed now. There's thousands of channels out there that need support.
Yeah, his articles that first appeared on Tube Filter way back in the day, I don't know what we're talking about here, 2013, 2014, were kind of like the articles that everyone looked to. And actually, maybe a bit later than that. They were the kind of the events to look forward to at events like VidCon, and Matt's rightly so got a fantastic reputation in the industry. So like you looked up to his work for a long time. So really interested to hear what he had to say in this interview where we let Carlos loose on his own with a guest.
All right. So before we get to that, let's thank our lovely sponsor, TubeBuddy, which is the ultimate tool for creators to streamline their daily workflow on YouTube, allowing for more time to make great content. For brands to help reduce busy work and focus on what matters, growing your channel. And for networks who are setting up, who want to give their partners the tools to success and an incentive to have them join your network.
And if for some reason you're not already using TubeBuddy, you can get an exclusive multi-channel discount by visiting videoinsiders.fm/TubeBuddy. Thank you, TubeBuddy.
Thank you, TubeBuddy. Matt, thank you so much for joining me on a call today, on a podcast. Sorry, I'm used to calls. How's it going?
It's going well. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be on. I've been, a fan of you guys both and of the podcast you guys are putting out there. So it's exciting to be on.
Awesome. Oh, wow. That's really weird to hear because if you would have told me a couple years ago that we'd be talking, I'd be like, no effing way, because I've been a fan ever since you got into the space when you were like giving out some awesome insights that for me really spoke to me. Obviously, it's an honor for me to sort of have you on the show.
Thank you.
I'm not going to get into the whole like backstory of how you got to be this awesome advisor that essentially talks about like the algorithm, but like because you do have this awesome video on Little Monster Media that you have this life story essentially. So anybody who really wants to sort of see where you came from, that's where they'll find it. But I've noticed that in the last year where, you've brought Little Monster Media a little bit more into the forefront with videos, and you're jumping into the scene where there's a lot of YouTube experts out there, some a lot more flashier and louder than others. I personally have, those that I like, those that I've been watching for years, and some that I don't for personal reasons. But I know what makes you different, but how are you making this different than the other ones?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I would say kind of first and foremost, one of the reasons why I ultimately decided to start the YouTube channel is because I felt like a serious understanding of audience development wasn't being fulfilled on YouTube, right?
Amen.
Where there's a lot of the same videos, a lot of the same like tactics to get people to view your videos. And it just felt like there was something missing, which kind of goes to the same reason why we started Little Monster, in the terms of like serious data analysis and understanding how the platform works and why it works. Because I'd see these videos from people I'd never met, right? Like none of the, standard YouTube experts would get hundreds of thousands of views. And it would be like, how to get 1,000 views a day, on YouTube. And you watch the video and it's like 8 minutes of someone being like, oh, I'm totally going to tell you how to do it. It's so mind blowing. And like at the end of the video, they're like, oh, and like post daily and make good thumbnails. Bye. Right. Or it's like, go on this person's video and comment on 1,000 videos a day. And it's just like, oh my God, what is being put out there? Which is kind of why I started doing these reports in the first place, is YouTube just hadn't talked about how to be successful on their platform, right? In any sort of like meaningful way. And so what I did was I wrote the articles and did the reports that I wanted to see. And it just felt like this should be out there and be public. And so, in terms of how we're different, I would say I probably put too much emphasis on the data and information and not enough emphasis on like as you stated, the flash of it, which is a little weird for me because like, I feel like when I give presentations, like I just go for it. Right. Yeah. And you can like feel the excitement and I don't hold back and that kind of stuff. And then like the moment I turn the camera on, it's like, hello, my name is Matt Gielen. Average view duration. These are the things that go into it and why it's important. And like, looking back at like my earlier videos, I was like, Jesus, man, they are right. This is super boring. And so like, I've had to really kind of experience or hone the skill set of being an on-camera presenter as opposed to a live presenter. So, I don't know how to articulate it other than that. Like, yeah. I don't have haven't been as introspective on myself in terms of the difference. But I think that's the goal. And one of the ways in which that's expressed, and we're going to do a lot more of this in the new year, is kind of the deep dives that we do with creators, that we do as a service. I'm going to do more of that on the channel because we started out with that, right? And like my perception of success is distorted, I realized, because like we had like 500 subscribers and these videos would do like 1,500 views, right? Yeah. And I was like, that's not good. I want tens of thousands of views, right?
Yeah.
And because like that's what I'm used to dealing with and not take into account like, dude, you launched this channel like 8 weeks ago. It takes time, which is advice I would give to creators that came to me that were like, oh, I just started this channel. Why don't I have 10,000 views? It's like, chill, bro. You gotta work at this. And so like I stopped doing them. And I was like, looking back on them now, it's like, those are some of our most successful and requested videos. And so it's like, yeah, of course, that's what's not happening on YouTube. In terms of like other YouTube experts, like doing that level of deep dive where you're seeing that 1 hour consultation on a report that took, 4, 5, 6 hours to put together, looking at their analytics, right? Like that was the main content I started the channel with and kind of ran away from it pretty quickly. And so we want to get back to doing that and being a real differentiator on our Little Monster channel, as opposed to some of the other stuff that's out there. Not that other YouTube experts can't do it, but it is a big lift, right? You're talking a pretty fair amount of time finding interesting creators that are willing to show their analytics and blah, blah, blah. So I think it'll be fun in 2020.
Yeah, I would say that's the reason why I've always sort of like appreciated your content. And, I lived for those reports you used to publish back in the day. I actually really like the old boring videos. And, like I have seen quite an evolution into the Matt Tuber version. And it's to me, Again, not that you're not doing it right. It's just, to me, it just feels awkward.
Fair enough.
But that's me. Like, again, and that's where you sort of like, you branch out. Like, you're trying to entertain as much as, give information. And that's, to me, that's the sort of difference here. And that some of the creators have. And again, to me, the reasons that I find you're different, and I appreciate you more, is because you do speak a little bit more of my language, even though we all get the surface level stuff. It's the deep stuff that really matters, and the stuff that, like, for me, when I'm working with bigger companies, like, that's the stuff I show them, and they're interested in looking at, as opposed to like, oh, we need to do thumbnails. So, that's my perception in general.
Yeah, that is a perfectly fair critique, because I am uncomfortable with it, right? It's like,
so am I.
Yeah, it's like, this information is so good, and we have such a good track record of it. It's like, why do I also have to do this performance piece?
Yeah.
But the general audience out there wants to be entertained while they're getting this information. So,
yep.
Sometimes you got to make sacrifices, and I'm glad my discomfort with it is at least being read by you. Right? Because it is, you gotta be on, you gotta have energy. Yeah. And there's a lot of days where it's like 3 PM. I know I got to record it. I've been working all day, and it's just like, all right, got to put on the Wu-Tang, get fired up, right? Dance around the office a little bit. So it is what it is.
I want the outtakes of that one.
Well, I just recorded yesterday afternoon. I recorded a breakdown of Susan Wojcicki 60 Minutes interview and what it means for creators. And it was, without a doubt, by far, by orders of magnitude, the most times I've ever had to tell my editor, don't include that. there were so many instances of being like, and so if you're a white nationalist, shut the fuck up. Sorry if this is a non-cursing podcast, but
no, it's all good.
You knew what you were signing up for.
Exactly. All right. Let's ask a question. What do you think is the biggest misconception when it comes to building an audience on YouTube?
The biggest misconception, kind of depends on who you're talking to. But I think the biggest misconception is that the algorithm or YouTube plays favorites, right? Or there's some kind of like magic ingredient to get the algorithm to begin like serving your videos more. It's a combination of so many factors, and it is work. It is a grind. And sometimes you just got to put in the time. But also I would say it's in large part just people's expectations, right? I confronted this, myself, as I mentioned kind of early on, expecting to get tremendous amounts of views without having a significant audience already either on the YouTube platform or on another platform. And, I think that's kind of the biggest one, is like just managing expectations of people. And sometimes it's just a matter of how many people would just be interested in this topic or vertical in general, right? Like, I talk to automotive channels on, a regular basis, and there's just not that many available views in that vertical, even though there are many, many people interested in it. And you have to think about the audience, right? The audience is generally an older male audience, and that audience isn't spending as much time as like 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13-year-olds watching YouTube content. So there's just so many views available that sometimes you just kind of hit a plateau, and it's because your content is being put in front of just about everyone interested in that.
Exactly. And my sort of like my little addition to that is, for me, more doesn't always equal better. And you said it right when it comes, it all depends on the channel. Certain channels, certain verticals don't necessarily need to have 1 million views to be successful.
Yeah.
It all depends on what your business case is in the space, right? So
100%.
There's definitely a lot of misconceptions in that space, because again, I always sort of show the example of one of my clients that does wealth management content, and it's like he gets 10,000 views, he's ecstatic, like he loves it, right? And he doesn't need to do 1 million views. He has, but it's still, the other day when his videos did a little bit less, he was like, I don't care, it's still like super relevant, and the audience is who I'm talking to. So that's essentially my take on that. No. Enough about me. So this one's less of a question, and it was inspired by your recent video with a nice thumbnail that says secret data worksheet. It's your, and you were talking about COPPA and talking about, no, you weren't talking about COPPA, but I'm bringing you into COPPA. You're talking about the fact that like 90 to 95% of the recommendation comes from viewer watch history, right? And with COPPA rules basically coming down, that essentially eliminates search history, from anybody that's considered underage and the content from that. Everybody's sort of in the idea that, this will mean that CPMs are going to drop. And again, this is, I have a hard time not inserting my anecdotes, but I feel like it's essentially going to turn kids' content into like almost like a different YouTube, and it's going to be much more curated like Netflix. What's your take on the whole COPPA situation and how that's going to shift how kids' content is going to be recommended?
Yeah.
It's a big one.
Yeah.
I don't expect and honestly, nobody has an answer. I literally had a meeting with a TV network this morning, and they're like looking at me with like, we have no idea what's going to happen. So
yeah. Well, the scariest thing is that I don't think YouTube has any idea what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, they just shifted over to like beta in part, and like everything broke.
Wow.
Which tends to happen every time YouTube makes a shift. They're like, oh, hey, we broke everything. And then, a couple of days later it's fixed. But for a couple of days, it's terrifying. Now, I think with this shift, it's going to be broken for quite some time. That said, from an algorithmic standpoint, the candidate generation filter is the one that relies most on watch history, or exclusively basically on watch history. Other factors as well, and other policy layer stuff as well. But like, that's where the main part is, right? So when someone comes to YouTube and a bunch of recommendations are made to them, the videos go from the corpus, which is the library of billions of YouTube videos. Millions of those videos are sent to the candidate generation filter. The millions of videos are ones that are worth this potential viewer's time at all, right? Because of the billions of videos, right, there's, billions of them that just like, they're just never going to recommend to anyone for any number of reasons. So millions get passed to the candidate generation filter, and the candidate generation filter passes hundreds of videos on to the ranking filter. So what the removal of like watch history and search history and demographic information from kids viewers does is it basically removes that filter. I don't know what adjustments they're making. They haven't said anything about it. They never really get that granular on a public release perspective. That tends to come out in white papers that are presented at conferences. So whether they will or won't release a white paper on what they've done in the kid space, I would imagine they will, because they're probably doing some pretty unique engineering around it, but it might not be for several years. But regardless, hundreds of videos get passed on the ranking filter, and the ranking filter is where video-specific metrics get taken into account. And so what we'll see, I think, is probably a lot of richer getting richer and poor disappearing from the face of the earth in terms of just like audience and reach and that kind of stuff, because the videos that would appear high in a ranking filter are going to be videos with outstanding metrics. And so I think we'll see a lot of that. My guess is that they're probably going to amp up the amount of quote unquote diversification that they do. So they released another white paper that talked about how they suggest a diverse set of content to someone. Now, that doesn't mean like diverse viewpoints. It means different topics and different channels, all within that viewer's interest, right? So they'll say people that really like Cocomelon also really like Little Baby Bum. So, if someone's watching Cocomelon, let's suggest Little Baby Bum so that it's not just Cocomelon. However, the problem becomes people are more likely to click on a Cocomelon video if they're watching a Cocomelon video, which means those videos will have higher click-through rates, which means they're more likely to be served, and so on and so forth. But with an increase in diversification policy, that might mean that more videos have more of a chance. That said, right, that's all going to be done with a ton of testing and over time. So immediately out of the gate, we're going to have some, I think, oh, look, Cocomelon's now doing 10 billion monthly views or something stupid, right? And you have to add to that that they're not going to show. My guess is going to be that they're just not going to show, and they may have stated as much, videos that haven't been manually reviewed to kids, right? It's just not going to happen based on, so many things. And so there's millions and millions and millions of videos that are probably perfectly good for kids, that are aimed at kids, that just are going to be in the back of the queue, right? And they haven't been manually reviewed, so they ain't going to be served. It's gonna suck. It's going to be harder for smaller channels to break through, would be my hypothesis, at the very least in the short term. And by that, I mean 90 to 180 days as they, figure out what the hell is going on. And then from a CPM standpoint, yeah, absolutely. I don't think anyone's like predicting that it's like, oh no, it'll be fine. Because I think even YouTube says like, no, you're all screwed, right?
Yeah.
And then they were like, we're going to open up this teeny tiny fund of like 33 million. You know what we spend on coffee in a month here to help creators, which is like, oh, okay, great, thanks, I guess. So no, I don't know. I mean, it's going to be a dark time. People are going to, write about it and think about it for years to come. And out of those dark times come opportunities, though. So my suggestion for entrepreneurs in this space is to, think about how you can build something out of the ashes of this fiasco, right? We rode the gravy train for years, dodging the law, and that gravy train's coming to an end, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see.
I always sort of bring the anecdote of like when I was working for a TV production company, and they had a kids department, and I would show them, what's happening on YouTube, and be like, but how the hell did they get away with that? Because they were following COPPA rules. They couldn't do anything, right? So especially selling to TV networks. And I do have a little bit of sort of like a glimmer of hope that just contextual advertising might still be a gravy train. I mean, I still always bring the anecdote of YouTube as a media buyer. When I was buying ads, YouTube was the bottom of the barrel. And to be honest, it still is for a lot of media buyers. They'll call CNN first before they call YouTube, or they put money on YouTube. And what often happens is those websites, those networks that sell those websites, they run out of inventory because obviously their video players suck, but there's not a lot of people watching, and they run out of inventory pretty quickly, right? So what ends up happening is people put their ads on YouTube. So my point here is that the CPMs on those sites are astronomical. Right? They're like $40, $50 CPMs. And because they're contextual and they're super, what you're getting. And if YouTube ever gets that sort of type of like, hey, we fully control the content, don't worry about it, brands are going to pay for that. So that's the part that I'm sort of a little, maybe 1% hopeful there.
Yeah. Well, I said as much in my FTC video that I did back when it was first announced. Like, I think this is going to be a huge opportunity once we get through the short-term pain, in no small part because you're talking about a company with the largest sales force in the world, a highly sought-after audience, right? And contextual advertising is still very, very good. It also means that the kids app is now monetizable. Like part of the reason it wasn't monetizable before is because they knew they were violating COPPA.
So crazy.
It'll also mean that like you're not getting like Chevy and Toyota ads on Little Baby Bum because they're like, oh, 35-year-olds watching this, and it's like, come on. So I think ultimately it's a very, very good thing. I think there's definitely going to be some short-term pain for the kids space. I think a lot of the videos from creators that are like, I talk about Marvel. That doesn't mean I'm for kids. Like, I think there's a lot of good consternation around that. I think the idea of adding a third classification option with a mixed audience is also very good, but it's very obvious why YouTube didn't do that because that shifts the burden back onto them, right? In terms of liability, where if you say my content is for a mixed audience, well, then YouTube has to determine the age of the viewer watching the video. And then the liability goes back to them. So the fact that option isn't there is very disconcerting, par for the course for YouTube. I mean, they got to protect themselves, but at the same time, like, it's not fair to a tremendous amount of creators that make their platform extremely valuable and viable. And they need to figure out how to get it done. I mean, look, they've got some of the smartest people in the world. Like, they better figure it out, because otherwise it's going to be bad for a much larger percentage of people than just kids creators. And it's kind of shady that they didn't do that from the get-go.
Scale.
Yeah, it's scale, but it's also par for the course for YouTube, right? What does YouTube care about? First and foremost, the audience. Secondly, advertisers. But above both of them is YouTube, mothership. And then finally, somewhere down the line, it's like creators, the ones that provide value for your platform. So thanks.
It's so funny because just as a side note, I got an email from somebody who's talking to TikTok, and TikTok sounds exactly like YouTube was 5 years ago. Like, they just want scale, but they realize that who the audience is on right now, and they're trying their darnest to age up fast. But that's another one. That's another one. That's another hole we won't get into. Anyways, let's go on to the next one. But 2019 literally felt like a roller coaster. It felt like literally every month there was something that would just create chaos in the world of a creator. And obviously, avoiding the COPPA discussion, which we just had, like, let's, what are you thinking is going to be like anything that you predict for 2020 in terms of the world of online creators? What's going to change? What's going to evolve?
Oof.
It's too wide of a question. It's a wide question.
That's a tough one. So outside of all the COPPA stuff, which is going to have like all sorts of ripple effects and ramifications, hopefully we see other platforms presenting opportunities for creators to diversify their revenue streams. I have something in the works on that front that I can't discuss more than to tease it, but is pretty exciting. Because I think there's some opportunities out there that creators are just missing that won't add too much to their workload, if at all, on opportunities just to expand their reach across platforms. So hopefully we see that. Beyond that, like, just from a pure YouTube perspective, I think we'll see a year of what is probably contraction, right? YouTube is... not in terms of like scale of audience or anything, but that 60 Minutes interview was strictly PR. Yeah. Right. Like, that's the reason she did it. Right. It was basically a 14-minute infomercial about how YouTube is like cleaning up its site and its positions on things to, speak to, first and foremost, ad buyers. Right.
Yep. That's who's watching anyways.
Yeah, exactly. 60 minutes. Speak to parents, right?
Yeah.
To reshape YouTube's image, but also to show them the scale of the problem that YouTube is up against, right? It's, in the interview, Susan talks about, 500 hours being uploaded to the platform every minute. It would take someone 24 days of doing nothing but staying awake and watching YouTube in order to watch all the content uploaded in just 1 minute. Right? It would take 30,000 individuals watching every piece of content uploaded just to stay on pace at 500 hours. And we know the volume of content is increasing every day, right? So like it's kind of a task that is unbelievably difficult to keep YouTube as a platform as is, right? And so I think what we'll see on YouTube is far more caution and far less openness. And I mean that not like, oh, they're going to institute policies that are going to be super draconian and that sort of thing. I just think, through a combination of policy and algorithm, they're going to scale back on the controversial aspect of content, put more resources into enforcing the policies that they've always had. And I think that's going to have somewhat of a dampening effect on the number of controversies, because you're spot on. This year was insane, right? Every month was a new thing, and it wasn't always the same, right? There was like deplatforming Crowder, right? As he's spouting homophobic slurs at another creator on the platform. It's like, you can't get any clearer of a violation of your policies, right? And that was a teeny tiny thing in the grand scheme. They also I think it was this year where they were like demonetizing creators just talking about, their different sexuality. And it was like, what the fuck are you idiots doing? And so like, I think they need a recovery year. And I think part of that recovery year is just going to be like, we need time without controversy. And I think that's going to get expressed both algorithmically and policy.
Yeah, it feels like it actually already feels like there's steps being taken just with like this week's announcement with like they're going to find a way to, to work with, violent video game content and to classify it in a way so that creators who in that space can make, more money and be less demonetized, which to me, I love how they spinned it as about the creator when for a fact that there's, big video game companies out there who need to be in front of these audiences who are like, what the hell? This is a lot of inventory that would disappear type of situation. But anyways, but in the end, it's a great step. To me, it was like, oh, at least they're trying because, there are competitors out there waiting to create platforms that do reach, audiences that are more mature. And we're not talking about the X type of mature. We're just talking about people who are willing to get content that, speak to them. So, 100%.
Yeah, no, that's a great prediction for the next year as well as hopefully a lot more value put onto creators as more competitors kind of come into the space. Like YouTube's going to have to start, I don't want to say courting the creators, but providing more value to them because there are going to be, more and more of these deals that come out like Mixer, right? Like why are these huge, massive live streamers signing deals on these other platforms and not YouTube, right? Where like almost all of this kind of originated, like, between YouTube and Twitch, that's where like, that industry in large part blew up. And YouTube has done a very poor job of like keeping that on their platform. Yeah.
I love Matt Pat's takes on these things, and he's sometimes, he's such an insider. He puts such a great perspective, and from Ninja's perspective, it's like security. It's like the guy does not need to make, to be stressed out about how much money he makes every couple of months. He just got a paycheck of X $20 million, and like, what does he need to think about now? Like he just needs to think about streaming. So it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that side of the space is fascinating.
Yeah. All he's got to do is focus on entertaining people in the same way that like, that's what YouTube tries to do, right? Entertain people. And when they put all these like hurdles and obstacles and adversity in the way of creators, you prevent them from providing the content that you need to entertain audiences.
Yeah. So actually, I feel like I'm sort of like scaling back in terms of like the question before the last one is the concept of video corpus death. Explain a little bit of what that is, and tell me like, can you be resurrected from it? Can a video be resurrected from it?
It certainly can. And the way you go about doing that is pushing people to that particular video, right? Like YouTube is constantly, for lack of a better term, re-indexing your video, right? What they're doing is they're just taking every impression of that video into account and feeding that back into the machine. So 100%, right? And the way you do that is through end screens, playlisting, links in descriptions, links in pinned comments, if you're not a kids channel, updating the title, updating the thumbnail, because those have a direct impact on click-through rate. So you certainly can. My question would be like, do you want to? Right? So like,
you're right.
For evergreen content, sure. Right. The easiest thing to do is just change the title and thumbnail. Like if it's still getting impressions, but it has a low click-through rate, and it's not getting very many impressions, changing the title and thumbnail and improving the click-through rate, which hopefully that does, right? You can change the metrics around it, the most important one being click-through rate, and maybe that gets that video more and more impressions. But the question about like, do you really want to is like, is the time investment in getting a video going from like 10 views a day to 100 views a day worth it overall? And yeah, if you can 10x a video, sure. But what if it goes from 10 to 12, right? Now it's a 20% increase, which isn't small, but like basically you're talking about 700 more views a year, right? If you made 70 cents, is your time that it took to do it, worth that 70 cents? Right. It's those things you want to weigh. Sometimes it's better just to go, oh, that didn't work. What can I do from a programming strategy and from a sales pitch strategy? Because every video you create is a sales pitch, right?
Yep.
From a sales pitch strategy moving forward to learn from that and make my next video better.
Yeah. It's an interesting conversation I just had recently where a client we were just sort of riffing back and forth. It's like, should we promote a video that failed, or should we promote like the best video on the channel? And I was like, there's a part of me that wants to give, I'm always rooting for the loser, not the loser, but you know what I'm saying? Like the little guy. So I want to help the old content, but then at the end of the day, like the champion content is what's driving the long views and people coming back and discovery. So, it makes a lot of sense to sort of give that one a TLC and just keep using that one as your champion for the channel. So you have to take a lot into consideration to do that.
For sure.
When it comes to channels themselves, I've always been battling back and forth with clients, producers, all that sort of stuff in terms of like creating a channel that's like just focused on one thing versus a channel that's built like a network a little bit with a bunch of shows, bunch of different properties. And I've always been of the mindset of like it needs to be a single, the way you describe it as single value proposition channel. Sort of like, if you want to make a channel about woodworking, don't talk about cars, like, type of situation. So, but, at the same time, it feels like YouTube sometimes changes that, or sometimes certain channels are able to get away with multiple type of content. Do you think that's still the case? Should we still be focusing on a single value proposition channel?
I absolutely think so. If you want to get maximum view efficiency, right?
Yep.
There can certainly be business reasons that you're willing to sacrifice viewership to have everything in one place for one reason or another. But generally speaking, we know that the vast majority of recommendations are based on a user's watch history. And YouTube doesn't understand the difference between series A, B, and C on a single channel. They just see videos from channel XYZ. And if a user comes to YouTube and sees, video from series B and series C, but only wants to watch series A, they don't click on those videos. YouTube becomes less likely to serve them your next video that comes out, whether it's series A, B, or C or not. Mm-hmm. Now, what we've definitely seen over the last year is that, a few underperforming videos is not going to like cause your channel to flow into a death spiral. And YouTube is a wonderful platform because it does have this long tail where, people can go and find that sort of stuff, and you can, build up a large library and have suggested videos in that library, drive that viewership. It just means that it takes longer, growth is less predictable. Videos that you really want to do well can greatly underperform because they were just put in front of the wrong people.
Yeah.
So we certainly recommend sticking with a single value proposition. That value proposition is going to be somewhat unique to each channel, but there's basically like 4 kind of core reasons we believe people watch content, right? They're interested in the topic, right? And most utility channels live in this space, right? You're going to get unpredictable viewership because some people just won't be interested in the topic. For example, there are people in Little Monsters audience that really just want to see like analytics deep dives and aren't going to click on like thumbnail strategies, right? And vice versa, where if I put up a video that was like a deep dive in a musician's analytics, right? There's going to be a lot of people that are like, oh, I'm not interested in what it looks like for a musician because I am not a musician. Then it's the style of the video. And there's very, very few channels that have such amazing, unique style that people watch just for that style. MKBHD is certainly an exception to that, or is the example of why someone might watch for the style, right? His videos are absolutely stunning and beautiful, which means that you don't necessarily care if he's talking about the iPhone or a Samsung phone. If, you're, a user of a different type of phone, you can still watch that video and really enjoy it for the style. And also for the third reason, which is the personality.
Yeah.
Right. MKBHD, I don't want to detract from this, is an awesome personality and entertainer. Right. And there's a lot of YouTube channels that people just watch for the personality. Right. Another example is like David Dobrik. Right. David Dobrik has a very kind of common style, right? It's like the handheld, frantic style, right? His topics are all over the map, right? So people aren't there for the topic of the video, but he's such a massively huge personality that he's super fun to watch. And then there's other really interesting personalities on there too.
Yep.
And then he does content in a whole bunch of different formats because he knows people are there for him and the personality. And the formats is kind of the fourth thing, right? Where people will choose to watch a video because they really love the format. For example, React, right? There aren't regular personalities on the React channel. You know, the style is a lockdown, you know, 2-camera.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing magical about the style, right? People watch it because they love that format.
Yeah.
And so like, that's the way we look at it. And the way what we try to do from an analytics perspective is to determine like, why is the audience watching this and how can you make fresh and unique content that still serves the audience on those kind of 4 reasons as to why they might watch, right? Is it your personality? Great. Well, then your value proposition every video is that they're hanging out with you and you can make content in a whole bunch of different styles and formats and people are still going to watch because they're there for you. Is it topic? Great. Here's the topics you need to focus on in order to get the most viewership for your channel and so on and so forth.
Yeah. What I find often myself in situations is because I work with a lot of TV content owners is that they'll come at me and we have like all these shows that were canceled or just have 3 seasons. And, you know, at first I come into a situation where it's like, well, we can't make a channel just based on the show. First off, it's offline and yes, it's got some nostalgia, but once we're done with the season, we're done with the channel. So I'm forced to sort of create a network within YouTube. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I've had mixed success, but as you said, like the growth is much slower than a single value proposition channel on that side of things.
Absolutely.
I'm going to throw you a curveball because, you know, we went through these questions together, but are there any creators out there that you think are driving things forward that are sort of like, you know, just breaking the standard out there that, or just really impress you these days? It doesn't have to be a new person. It's just somebody who's still there and just like, oh, every video you're just looking forward to.
Well, I get asked this question from time to time, and I always kind of go back to the answer of like, I don't really watch YouTube for entertainment purposes, right? So, you know, I'm 36. I got 2 kids, run a company. I have very, very limited free time. One of the things I really tend to not want to do when I have free time is make choices.
You're right.
Right? And like, that's what you have to do on YouTube. You got to make a choice like every 10 minutes, right? Really, you got to make a choice every second. Do I keep watching this video or do I click on something else? Right? So like, I don't really watch it for entertainment. I watch it more from like a study perspective. And I don't think that there's a lot where I'm like, ooh, this is so fresh and unique, in no small part because of the taxonomy that I wrote, right? Where like, I'm now looking at YouTube videos in the same way that I used to look at films, right? I was a film student in college and any film student will tell you, like, once you take a few film courses, it basically just ruins film for you, right? You're just like, the magic is gone, right? It's just like, okay, right? It took me, you know, 6-7 years of not being, you know, a film student in the film industry to really be able to enjoy a film again, right? Or enjoy it from that perspective of like, oh, I see what they did there. Oh yeah, I remember that. Oh yeah, that's an influence from this, where it becomes fun again and not like, oh God, I'm analyzing again, like, you know, kind of thing.
It's funny. I have the same thing when it comes to TV shows.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, here's the procedure. Okay. Yeah. There's the bad guy. Okay. Yep. Hero's going to come through again. Okay, great. Got it. And so like when I'm relaxing, it's like, I want to throw on, you know, Parks and Rec or 30 Rock or The Office, just have some background noise, read Twitter, that kind of thing. I think there are some white spaces where I would love to see stuff happen in digital video that it's like, everyone's kind of just honing in on like, okay, here's what works. Let's do more of what works and just subtly adjust and tweak that aspect of things. What I would say is I really love the content coming out of Jubilee. I love the content coming out of Cut. I think they do a really interesting job. I think BuzzFeed was doing some really interesting stuff for a while, and now it's just like rinse and repeat over there. Mm-hmm. So generally speaking, not really, in no small part because I kind of ruined it for myself. So to the point where it's like things used to be like, whoa, what are they doing? This is so cool. It's so fresh and unique. And now it's like, oh no, that's just a reaction commentary video with the challenge mixed in,
Yeah.
Oh no, hold on. I've got one.
Okay.
Chad and V Quaint. Chad Wildclay and V Quaint.
Oh, never heard of them.
So they do Spy Ninjas, right? And they were one of the first, if not the first channel to do like the hacker stuff, right? Yeah. Where essentially what they figured out was how to make a scripted narrative web series for YouTube and actually have it be successful.
Whoa.
Right? And it's brilliant from my perspective because no one has really figured out how to do that in a meaningful, consistent, ongoing way, I think, until they came along. And so what they're doing on their channel is absolutely phenomenal because just no one had done that before. Like, how many web series have been created?
My God.
Right? People are just like, oh God, it's like, there's a reason they make, hundreds of TV pilots, maybe a dozen make it to air. And if you're lucky, you get one each year that goes to 3 seasons or more, right? Mm-hmm. These are the most competent, successful people making this stuff in the industry with $1 million budgets on a per episode basis, and most of them fail, right?
Yep.
If you apply that to like web series, it's like, what chance do you have to entertaining someone, for 22 minutes when that's what you're going up against, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the success rate of what you're going up against, right? It's very, very difficult. And so like Chad and V have done just like remarkable with doing something that basically no one else has ever done, and have basically shown all digital creators, here's how you make a narrative web series successful on YouTube. And I think there's a lot of lessons in there that you could learn if that's your bag and what you want to do.
That's amazing. Like I for one had given up on that idea. I've worked with a couple of like web series producers, and the only reason they're sustainable is because they're branded web series. And, that's literally it. And once the brand's out, you're done. It's usually after 1 or 2 seasons. And, so yeah, it's great to hear that somebody's figured it out.
And they're buying 50% of their views to deliver on the guaranteed
exactly
views.
Exactly, all that sort of stuff. I for one, I always like to mention stuff like Elle Mills in Ottawa, who was highly recommended from Casey Neistat like a couple years ago, and just her style of filming, it's still a day in the life, but like the way she tells stories is just amazing. She burnt herself out a bit because she worked so hard on the way she films and the way she, I couldn't believe that it was like a 1-person team doing that. Like that's how well her content was for me. And I'm still big fan of like opening doors to places that for most of us feels mundane, or we just is complete mystery. Again, another Canadian creator that I want to sort of highlight that I haven't really highlighted is Jeff HK, which is a creator who lives in his career is he works in a shipping container, and he brings in that perspective, right? And for me, and I'll give you a little bit of my insight. Like I'm an introvert, and it's like the idea of being on a ship for weeks on end and not talking to anybody, like, is fascinating for me. So like I love that stuff. And he again, like, talk about the type of content that like no television production company would ever want to make. Like he's killing it, and a couple of his videos went quasi viral with a couple million views. And anyways, I always love that type of stuff. It's not really an evolution. I would say Elle Mills is sort of like just the way the production level that she would put behind her stuff. I was like, if one kid can do this, and she's showing how big production companies are can't do this on this platform. That to me gave me hope. And also what Shane Dawson's been doing for the past year, with his documentaries. I'm like, that's insane. The fact that he's been able to evolve in this space. And again, it's different from the narrative side of things, but I love the fact that it just keeps surprising me.
Yeah, no, he's he's a OG.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
And having him reinvent himself so many times, I think is really great example to other YouTubers of how you have to evolve, right? No show runs forever, right? Finding a Simpsons or, a late night show is real difficult.
Yes.
And so reinventing yourself and staying up with the times and with the audience on the platform, Shane has done a master class in that for sure.
Yeah, and it's actually goes back to a rant that I had this week on Twitter about how community and how these channels, these OG channels, seem to have forgotten community. And this is almost a tangent here, but it's Shane Dawson, the fact that Shane Dawson OG and he can just keep going. And I was looking at a specific channel the other day that's a channel about extreme food, fast food that might start with Epic, that has almost 10 million subscribers and struggles to hit 100,000 per view per video. And it's like, Jesus, this hasn't evolved in 10 years. And it's just amazing to see how some of them just understand it, they just keep evolving, and others get stuck in a format that they just don't want to break because they're scared, So, and
I didn't know Canadians were allowed to badmouth each other.
No comment. I did not specify anybody.
Oh yeah, no one's gonna have any idea.
All right, so let's wrap this up.
Yeah,
many platforms out there that have come and gone. There's new ones every day. TikTok's the talk of the town these days, even though I highly doubt the why do you think YouTube just keeps standing the test of time? I'm surprised myself, actually.
Yeah. Well, I think in no small part because they have the backing of the largest or second largest company in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's helpful when your parent company is a printing press of money and is like, oh, you lost $1 billion this year? That's cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they very strategically have always geared everything towards the audience, right? Everything else flows from the audience, and by ensuring that people spend more and more time on it, that's how they've managed to succeed and to grow. They have an amazing monetization platform, and with all of its faults, it's still the platform that for the longest time has enabled people to make a lot of money. Right. And so people invest their time in it and building value for the platform. And, I've said this many times, and I don't mean it as a bad thing. I mean it as a good thing. YouTube is the best drug dealer in the world, right? Their entire goal is to, give you the first one free. So you come back again and again and again, and you spend longer and longer and longer, right? They've, been extremely successful in doing that based on their content recommendations and how they program the site. And yeah, there have been pitfalls along the way, but they've been able to weather that. It's a beast, right?
Yep.
It's going to be a Herculean task to chip away at what they've been able to do and how they've been able to brand themselves. So, I think there's a lot going on there that other people have a very, very hard time competing with, in no small part because how are you going to compete with free basically when the cost to serve video content, right, and to actually make good recommendations to people is astronomical, right? It's tough. It's going to be real tough.
Yeah, I think the advantage here is the fact that old content never dies on a platform, right? And again, whenever we're talking about Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, it's sort of like these platforms, and LinkedIn, which was the recent episode. It's like when your content disappears after a day, what's the long-term value of building an audience there? Yes, there's the marketing perspective, but anybody that's managed a channel sees how valuable sometimes content that you uploaded 5 years ago ends up being a winner for you. And what platform does that other than Google search, right? And it's the same company. So go figure.
Yep.
Awesome. Matt, tell people where they can reach out to you.
Yeah, well, you can certainly go to our website, littlemonstermediaco.com. You can follow us on Twitter, Lil Monster MC, Lil Monster MC. And of course, you can find a library of videos all on how to build your YouTube audience on our YouTube channel, which is just Little Monster Media Co.
I will add all the links in the show notes. Thank you very much, Matt, for joining me. This was an awesome conversation that I feel like we could go on for a couple more hours, but we'll back. And also, big congratulations on becoming a new dad. That's an amazing feat that I'm very, envious. I won't say envious, but also like in awe of. That's the word. That's the word that I'm looking for. I'm more of a dog of a fur daddy than a real daddy. So awesome. Have a good one. Have a good holidays.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt. That was amazing. Tom, what did you think?
Yeah, really, really interesting. So many things that I'm just like listening, like, yeah, absolutely, 100% agree. And there are some things that me and Matt don't always 100% agree on in terms of strategy, but that's the same with me and any other person that's teaching YouTube, and the same between, all of us. There's all, we all teach slightly different ways, but kind of picking out a few things that really stood up to me that I was really like, I totally agree. Like his prediction that the kind of rich are going to get richer and the poor are going to get poorer. So media companies doing better and better, and the kind of smaller independent YouTuber being kind of marginalized. That really kind of stood out for me. His recommendations that channels should only be like single interest channels. This is what I teach people week in and week out, clients that are doing like a million things for a million different people, where it should be like YouTube loves subject matter experts. Just choose one single thing and talk about it every single week. People definitely don't take enough notice of that.
I'll push back on that one. The only thing the caveat on that one is that I think also content needs to evolve.
Oh yeah. So that's not to say within that certain niche, you can't talk about different subtopics and use different formats. And it doesn't mean that you can't like do how-to videos without being entertaining. All of the content on the channel needs to come from like the same universe, You can't be like doing a cooking video one day and then a movie review the next day and then a vlog from your trip to Disneyland the next day. That just doesn't work. But you'd be surprised how often that happens.
Yep.
And then the main thing, and huge congratulations for the Gielen family getting one bigger, is that like him, extremely busy, have kids, very little time to watch YouTube videos as like a sit back, relaxed, passive activity as a hobby. And it's not because like, I see enough YouTube all the time. It's because, man, I'm busy and life's too short. And if I had a few more hours in the day, then maybe.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. Thanks again, Matt, for joining us. That was a very real honor. Awesome. As we close up, I wanted to say, obviously, if you love the show, give us a thumbs up on the old Apple Podcasts app, because that's literally the only one where you can do that. And if you are listening on any other app, please subscribe if you haven't already. If you're just discovering us, Matt probably shared us. Obviously, tell your friends about us. That would be great.
And we cannot say goodbye without saying one last thank you to our amazing sponsor, TubeBuddy. And remember, you can get that exclusive Video Insiders discount by visiting videoinsiders.fm/TubeBuddy.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening. Speak to you soon.
Bye.
I'll speak to you soon. That's the end of the phone call. Cheers, everybody. We'll be back in a few weeks.
Later.